Welcome to the panel presentation of Shaharzad Akbar, part of the series we're calling Never Go Back, Afghan Women's Rights in the Unfolding Intra-Afghan Talks, which is part of our 2020 annual symposium. It's my pleasure to welcome and introduce Shaharzad Akbar, our panelist, who is a renowned human rights activist and currently chair of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission. Before this role, Shaharzad served as deputy on the National Security Council for Peace and Civilian Protection, worked as senior advisor to the Afghan president on high development councils, where she coordinated the prioritization of development projects and programs for high-level decision-making. She has been country director of Open Society Afghanistan, partner and chief operating officer with Kara Consulting, a firm owned and run by young Afghans in Kabul, which she co-founded in 2010, an analyst for the Free and Fair Election Foundation, and a journalist for BBC Afghanistan. So you can pick up on a couple of themes in this resume, one being a commitment to openness, information, reporting, and political participation, and another to youth representation. I think we've seen these are the perspectives that she brings to her leadership of the Human Rights Commission and her broader role of being an active voice on political issues related to her country and her generation. She's based in Kabul, from where she joins us tonight for this discussion. And we're just going to launch right into it. As you very well know, you're kind of in the epicenter of a lot happening in a country where there's always a lot happening, but especially right now, we've been referring to this time as being at a kind of crossroads and being a really, really important time to be paying attention to what's going on and being vigilant. So without wasting any time at all, we want to ask you right away your own view on things. Are you generally more optimistic or pessimistic regarding the current state of the peace process?
Thank you. I'm very, very honored to be part of this important discussion. And as you said, at this critical time, I'd like to be optimistic. Afghans are very tired of the war and bloodshed, and it's good to see that there is a general momentum around resolving differences through a political process. And it's good to see the two sides sitting down to negotiate. However, I'm also aware, as are I think most Afghans, that it will not be an easy process. It will also not. It will take a lot of time, and many different things need to be in place for it to succeed, including regional actors, the role of international community, as well as the flexibility shown by both sides and a genuine commitment to end the war through talks and to compromise. None of these things will be easy or quick. I am concerned about the kind of international dimension and the regional dimension a bit, and how that might affect the success or failure of talks. We have a deadline approaching of US withdrawal that will have implications for Afghanistan and for the talks. So there's also, great areas of concern that remain. But just seeing both sides sitting down to talk things through, that's a good sign. That's progress in itself.
Absolutely. I was listening to a podcast yesterday morning where the host was saying, with regards to the situation in the United States currently and the civil unrest there, he was saying ultimately the only solution is conversations, is people talking to each other. And that sounds so simple, and yet we don't really have the tools to do that, or at least they feel that way in the US, that two different political sides can't speak to each other. So it's something so challenging and yet so simple at the same time. So what outcomes do you want from the peace process in Afghanistan?
The initial outcome, the first outcome, is to see actually the process has a connection to people's lives, and there's a tangible relief for people, civilians. The Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission documents civilian casualties. Unfortunately, despite the ongoing discussions between US and Taliban, and now the two Afghan sides, civilians continue to be targeted and killed and harmed on a daily basis. We also, of course, have losses of security forces and Taliban's fighters, both sides This has huge implications for society as a whole. Many people are now direct victims of this conflict. So one of the most immediate outcomes that would make this process more credible for Afghans would be commitment from both sides to stop targeting civilians and then move to a ceasefire that will allow access to services, that will allow better access to services and rights for all Afghans. Long-term outcome of the is an inclusive government that continues to expand access to rights for all Afghans. For me, as a human rights activist, one of the main issues with this conflict is that it continues to deprive Afghans of their access to basic rights. An outcome, a desired outcome would be a situation where we'll have more women in now conflict-torn areas having access to healthcare, to education, to employment, more young people having access to freedom of expression, to media, to political participation, that they are now unable to do so due to conflict. So increasing the opportunities and expanding the possibility of dignified life for more Afghans, something that the conflict has been preventing all these years.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the education sector in Afghanistan, we always talk about that balance between access and quality. And I think that equation applies to all sectors, whether you're talking about healthcare or anything else. It's not enough to simply have the infrastructure, to have the clinics, to have the staff. People have to actually be able to safely access those places. And so often they're not able to because of insecurity. There might be a nice new clinic down the road, but the road is unsafe to travel to because of the war. So human rights are so dependent on the state of security in the country. When you look at the process to date, would you say that all the parties are at the table? Is this an inclusive peace process in your view?
Not so far. I would say that this process right now, we have two negotiating teams, but Afghanistan is a diverse country. And a lot has changed and a lot of important issues should be on the table. And to discuss those issues, we will need others to be around the table as well, or to be heard by both negotiating. The key constituencies who are absent right now are the victims of war. In Afghanistan, due to decades of conflict, we have a large constituency of victims. For the peace process to be truly legitimate and credible, we need to have them heard. We need to pay attention to their demands. We need to first acknowledge that victims have demands and rights, and then listen to those demands and pay attention to those rights and how they will be reflected in any outcome or agreement of the peace process. So that's one key missing constituency right now. Additionally, for discussions around other very sensitive and difficult issues like women's rights, rights of minorities, freedom of expression, I believe we need to expand beyond the two negotiating teams. Of course, the two negotiating teams ironing out the details, but it's very important that, for instance, on discussions on women's rights, we now have from 42 negotiators on both sides, we only have 4 women. That's completely insufficient. So we need to bring women's rights activists, scholars, religious scholars to present their views and to present their arguments to both negotiating parts to inform the debate. Similarly, for instance, on freedom of expression, don't have a seat around the table, of course. But when there are discussions about freedom of expression and how the future might look for freedom of expression, it's important to hear from media. One of the most vibrant sectors in Afghanistan and key, I think, to Afghanistan's continued stability and continued culture of democratic institutions.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would seem that that part of the process, getting the representation of women, would be the easy part. The outcomes is the hard part. But even this process is mired in a lack of real representation, despite all the rhetoric. There's been so much talk about women's participation, and the fear is that that might be just token in the end and not substantial the way things are going. So thanks for your views on that. The next thing I want to ask you is about the sector that is of great interest and concern to us at Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan, education. So there have been rumors that a possible concession to be made to the Taliban's views on girls' education is to limit female education in some way, whether it's cutting it off after primary school or not allowing them to attend the same kind of public schools that boys attend or something like that. Is there any truth to these claims?
It's very hard to know what are the detailed views from Taliban on a variety of human rights issues, including women's rights to education, to movement, to participation in public life. They try to keep it very vague, which makes a genuine discussion difficult. And it's partly also part of the reason for the concern, because this vagueness, of course, leads to all sorts of speculations, rumors, fears. What we know about women's education, girls' education in Taliban is that in Taliban-controlled areas, it's very contextual. In some areas, there is greater flexibility, and girls can go to school at least at the primary level. In some areas, the girls' schools are completely closed. It's not a very universal approach so far. They seem to kind of go with the local communities' demand and pressure. What's important to remember is that Afghanistan has changed a great deal in the past 20 years. When my parents were growing up, for instance, my father a small village in Jawzjan. When he was growing up, when he was a young boy, the officials, the people in the village bribed the officials to close the school for boys because they believed that education would manipulate children, or it would be bad for them. In the same village now, we have girls' schools despite Taliban pressure and intimidation in the areas close to the village. So Afghans' attitudes to women's education has changed a great deal. Women are now studying in fields that they had never studied before. Women in military, we have more and more women young girls interested in becoming politicians and becoming journalists. The sky is the limit, really, in terms of aspirations of women from all over Afghanistan. It's not just women in urban centers. Just last week, we heard about a young woman whose father is a coal miner, his mother is a housewife, and she topped the university entrance exam. So there's a universal desire for girls' education and for women being represented in all sectors. And I think Taliban have to make peace with that reality.
Absolutely. It's so interesting how change is so painfully slow and yet so quick too, and how we can't see it happening before us often. In Canada, when women did not have the vote, everybody said, this is how it is. Things will never change, even if we want them to change. This is our tradition. This is our culture. And now we say that women voting is our culture, is our tradition. And we act as if it always was this way. And it really wasn't that long ago that things were so different. And I look at, even the history of my own family, the different access levels to education, the different kinds of jobs, the different family sizes, going from my grandmother's generation to my mother's to mine. It happens really, really quickly. And yet it feels like, slow as molasses when you're actually in the thick of it and patiently waiting for change. So what is your message for us, for our network at Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan, and for Canadians at large? What can we as Canadians do to help ensure women's rights are protected during and after a peace process?
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about Canada is a feminist foreign policy. I think more countries need to take it up. And I believe that Canadians in Afghanistan, the perception about Canada is a very positive perception. And this is really good leverage, I think, that can be utilized well with both parties to the conflict. The perception is that Canada's involvement is seen more an involvement in development and humanitarian assistance rather than the involvement in the war against terror. And the kind of humanitarian and development initiatives and efforts of Canada are, I think, recognized by Afghans at large. So this provides Canada with the credibility to stand by and stand for human rights in the peace process and women's rights in the peace process and beyond. Not all our partners have a similar standing, I would say. So I think it's important to recognize this leverage and to utilize it really well moving forward. I think it's also important for Canadians to know that Afghanistan in the past 20 years, a lot has gone wrong, but there also have been a lot of achievements. We have built things here, we have built institutions here, there's greater human capacity and resources than it was 20 years ago. In many ways, it's a different Afghanistan. And we are on a path, although a difficult path, to becoming on a path to self-reliance, to becoming a better member of the international community. And that's only possible if all citizens, regardless of their gender, their ethnicity, their language, their religion, is well utilized, that we have a state that doesn't systematically discriminate against some of the population of the country based on any of these issues. And Canada being a very diverse society, I think these discussions happen there also in a different way about the importance of equality and citizenship and everyone having belonging and what does it mean for the prosperity of the country. So for our partnership to become a better partnership for a more two-way relationship, we need the kind of state and society that allows us all to thrive. And I think that's very important for our partners and our colleagues to remember.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the value of pluralism and need for inclusion and true participation, I think. Yeah, absolutely. So thinking beyond Canada and to the broader international community, what would you say is the single most important thing that you'd ask of the international community to support Afghanistan during the peace negotiation stage?
At this stage, I think we have all talked about bringing both sides to the table. We should now focus on ensuring that both sides remain genuine in their engagement with each other, and that they truly commit to an inclusive process. So continuing to advocate for inclusion of women, inclusion of minorities, inclusion of victims, particularly at this stage. It's very important that our international partners remind both sides and use their leverage with both sides to make the process truly inclusive, and to also urge them to not leave the table. Afghans deserve a real opportunity at peace. Afghans deserve a reduction in violence and a ceasefire. And Afghans deserve both sides to give it their best to make it work, to try to make it work. So I think these are some of the messages that can be reinforced, that could be productive, could be constructive for the process as a whole.
Right. Well, Shaharzad, it has been wonderful speaking with you and hearing your analysis of the current situation, because you're really at the heart of the matter, working on human rights. And at the end of the day, the protection of human rights is so essential to the peace process and what we really want to see come out of the whole thing. And I know that this means that the role of the Human Rights Commission is more important now than ever. And as the leader of that organization, you must be exceptionally busy these days. So we are so grateful to you for sharing your time with us and giving us these insights tonight. We're keenly watching the situation, hoping for the best, with a very strong dose of caution mixed in as well. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our members. We wish you all the best for the work of the Commission at this very critical time. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauryn, and thank you and your colleagues for your great work. And I'm very happy to have been part of this conversation again.